So this book is one of Lewis's lesser known works, at least in regards to the people that I've spoken to who are Lewis fans. And that book is Till We Have Faces. This is my favorite book of all time. I know that Lewis himself also loved this book. This is considered his magnum opus of his fiction. I also have a beautiful first edition copy here, and just has a stunning cover, original cover and everything. He did dedicate this book to Joy Davidman, which was his wife. I am going to explain this book and talk about this book in parts, and I do have some notes for reference here in front of me. And first I'm going to talk about what this book is about. So I'm probably going to act as if this is a book club and we've just finished this book, and so I will hit some major points, but I'll also be riffing and giving some additional insight. So what is this book about? So this is a myth retold about Cupid and Psyche. The Literary Life podcast has some great ways of breaking this book down chapter by chapter, and some of these points are inspired by many of their episodes on this book. I haven't listened to every single episode that pertains to those chapters, but I do highly recommend the Literary Life podcast and just type in the search bar Till We Have Faces, the Literary Life, and it'll pull it up. It should. And they actually claim that this is not a myth retold because it doesn't follow the typical myth pattern that is found in ancient texts. So this is about three sisters who live in the fictional kingdom of Glome, and this is a tiny little kingdom. It's in no way a kingdom of renown. They're not known for anything great. And these three sisters live there. They are the daughters of the king. And there are two sisters who are born before the beautiful sister, who is Psyche. And our main character in this book is in first person too, which I typically don't love first person books, but Lewis wrote it. It's told from the perspective of Auril, and that is just how I'm going to pronounce it. The pronunciation of her name is a debate, but I'm going to say Auril because that's just what I said in my head as I was reading the book. And she has another sister named Redival. So there are three sisters. There's Redival, Auril, and then Psyche. Auril is the oldest, and it's from her perspective. There's Redival, and then there's Psyche. Psyche is the most beautiful in all of the land, by far. And Auril, by contrast, is the most unattractive in all of the land, by far. And those themes and things about their appearance are brought up all throughout the book, which I think does have some deeper significance to it as well. Redival is also, in her own way, beautiful. And so Auril is compared and contrasted, and although I do think that the theme of her ugliness goes deeper than just like the physical appearance. There's a famine in the kingdom of Glome, in the land, and there is a goddess named Ungit who is requiring a sacrifice in order for this famine to be lifted. And so in their tradition in the kingdom of Glome, they would offer up a perfect sacrifice, which is a type, if I can even say that in this context, of Christ's figure, who would be a perfect sacrifice, a perfect lamb to be offered up to abolish the sin and the wrath of God against us for sinning against him. And so Ungit requires this sacrifice, and Psyche would be that sacrifice. She doesn't initially want that or choose that for herself, but you see a gradual acceptance and a submission, and even at the end, to Auril's great dismay, even a delight and a desire to be sacrificed to this god of the mountain, who is, beastly and is described to be horrific and to devour the sacrifice in which is being offered to him. This is spoiler stuff too, so I guess I'll put that in the title as well, but this is a book review, and so there are going to be lots of spoilers. Personally, I don't know exactly how you do book reviews without doing spoilers. I guess it's possible, but there's spoilers here. I'm going to go into detail about every event that pretty much goes on. So she's chosen to be offered. She goes and is offered and is sacrificed and then disappears. Her sister Auril goes and tries to find her on this mountain. It's a perilous journey. She finds Psyche. Psyche is undoubtedly doing well. She's beautiful as ever. She is dressed in rags though, and Auril can't see the invisible kingdom in which Psyche has been chosen to live in, and she is now the sort of the queen of this castle, which is Cupid's dwelling place, and he is a god in the ancient myth. So she is chosen to be his bride, and so she lives with Cupid in this castle, and she's treated wonderfully, and she's well fed, and she's having a wonderful life on top of this mountain. And so Auril convinces her to disobey the promise or the command that Cupid gave to Psyche, which was, you are not allowed to see me. And so Auril convinces Psyche to get a lantern whenever he goes in at night and is asleep, and to shine the lantern on his face. And some of the books have, like the classic, or the like one of the newer copies has a girl with a lantern on the cover of it. That's Psyche holding up the lantern to reveal Cupid's face. Cupid wakes up, finds out, and ultimately banishes Psyche, and the story goes from there. And the story, that is sort of where we end with the story of Psyche until the very end, and the rest of the book follows Auril's regret, her internal struggle, and ultimately I think her redemption. This book is so super layered that I'm not going to be able to go into every single detail, but here are the high points. So after Psyche is banished, Auril is crowned queen after her father dies, and her father is a horrific, terrible, abusive person, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. Auril becomes a queen, and she runs a very successful kingdom. With this success, we see her be confronted with ultimately what inspired her to convince her sister Psyche to do the things that she did, which was jealousy and envy, which are central themes of this book. All of the events that transpire, I believe, after the fact that Auril condemns Psyche and convinces her to go against her. And this is because I will note, Auril the whole time disbelieves Psyche, or maybe halfway partly believes her, because she can't see the things that Psyche is and has become. And so she thinks that she's crazy, and then she's very angry at the fact that Psyche has a replaced love and affection for this new life, and Auril feels abandoned. And there's so many good, like, just themes about possessiveness. Do we really love the things that we obsess over? Are obsession and love synonymous, or are they in direct opposition to each other? And so here are some major themes: jealousy and envy. So jealousy, it's the feeling of envy, or something that someone, or wanting something that someone has. There's a protectiveness. Then also theme of envy. Envy is wanting something that someone has, and also not wanting them to have it. So it's not enough that you have it. So like, let's say if someone is beautiful, you also want to be beautiful. You also want them to be not beautiful and you be beautiful. Like that, I think, is envy. You want people to be stripped from the things that they have. I think that there's a lot of good evidence for that's what envy requires. because envy it demands and requires that it stand alone. And that's what Psyche wanted in her relationship, or that's what Auril wanted in her relationship with Psyche. And so Psyche is this object of envy. And I think it's very interesting too, the theme of the beautiful, the most beautiful one would usually, you would think, would have been subjected to this temptation to be haughty and unkind and condemning to those that she thought were beneath her in beauty or charisma or things of that nature. But Psyche is actually extremely gracious and long-suffering and understanding. Maybe this is not always true, but in some cases we villainize those who are attractive, gifted, talented, intelligent, and think and assume that just because they are good at this one thing or they look this certain way, we assume that they must feel that everyone around them is subservient to them or some way, or they have a pride issue. But it's ironic how usually the people who are envious of those people have the pride issue. So I think that's what we're seeing here, that kind of play out. Envy is extremely isolating, both for the person who is envious and for the object of the envy. You really can't be truly loved if you're envied. And you really can't truly love if you do envy. Another major theme is pride. And we see Auril completely consumed with pride and envy. And I think that pride and envy have to hold hands. Pride says, I am owed this thing. I'm entitled to this kind of treatment. I'm entitled to this kind of position. And so you envy people who do have those things, and you're consumed with pride because you think that you are owed that. And so I think that we see that very much with Auril. She's also very disillusioned. Pride and envy can be disillusioning. And we can see that almost like even a drunkenness with Auril and her emotions. She's completely unhinged in some areas of the book and the story, and they're fueled by jealousy, pride, and envy. We are very easy on ourselves when it comes to these things in our own hearts and lives. But these things are insidious, and they can produce extremely damaging results, even though we assume that like there's nothing really damaging about my own pride, if we can even see that it's pride, or even are aware that we're envious. But these things are extremely damaging. Auril is seen, or she's depicted as a devouring character. So she's likened even to a spider by one of the characters in the book, where she gets what she wants out of people and she discards them and has no kind of awareness or any kind of sympathy or empathy at all for what they might need or don't need. I guess you could argue that some of her motives, there were understandable motives, is all that I'll say. But still, she would manipulate herself to get what she wanted. And ultimately, I think what Lewis is trying to get us to see with her character and with her story is all of these things are, yes, I think that envy and pride are manifestations of unbelief. She had a case against the gods. She had a case against Ungit for being the way that Ungit was. You know, why in the world would a god require a perfect sacrifice to begin with? Why do things have to be the way that they are in regards to their particular religious practices in Gloam? Why these certain requirements? And it is just so telling about our own hearts and the way that we view God and the way that we hold our fist up against God and we demand things that we ought not. And with that, sacrifice is a large theme as well. You see sort of the comparison between Oral believing that she's sacrificing herself and being very loving in various ways, but then Psyche ultimately is the one who is depicted as being the greatest, sacrificing the most. Oral just refuses to believe what she has seen. There's even a point in the book where Cupid comes to her, and that scene is honestly very beautiful, the way that it's written. She's afraid and she sees him. It's not as if he's not real, but she refuses to live her life according to what she has seen. Also, a theme of intellectualism versus faith. Can those two things coexist? And are they synonymous? Does faith require, or can it use, your intellect? And I think vice versa. So the story definitely plays around with that a lot, which if you know anything about Lewis's background, you'll know that is a part of a theme of his testimony. Why do I love this book? Why is this my favorite book? This is my favorite book of all time. And actually, fun fact, the character of Oral is one of my favorite characters. Now, she's not my main favorite, which is ironic because this is my favorite book. But people like always want to down on Oral. I love Oral. I don't know why. It's not because I feel any kind of sympathy towards her particularly. That's not the foundation of why I like her. I think that she is one of the most realistic characters I've ever read in a book. I have never read a book to date that describes the human condition so clearly, deeply, and accurately as it relates to our condition within humankind, mankind, and also our relationship to God. It really presents such a wonderful question to me every time that I've read this book. This is, I think, the third time I read it this year. Do we love what we obsess over, or who we obsess over? As I've just sort of described earlier, kind of how that fleshes out. Is it possible to love what we envy? I think it forces you to ask that question, and even in a deeper theological sense. I don't think that we may see it this way, but I think that when we're Christians, we are submitted to the will of God, to the Word of God, and to His commands, and His commands are not burdensome, it says in Scripture. And so I think that we are envious of the position of Lord over our lives. We want to be Lord over our lives. We don't want God to be Lord over our lives. And so we cannot, I think, simultaneously love God and also feel entitled to the position of being Lord over our lives. Those two things can't coexist. It also touches on how manipulative we can be in our relationships in order to produce the results that we want. And also how disillusioned we can be about our own hearts and intentions if we allow ourselves and not God to be the arbiter of our lives. I think that we can ask honest questions to God. But we aren't allowed to be angry at God or judge Him. He judges us. We don't condemn Him. If we're not believers, if we aren't humbly coming to Him and confessing our sin, He condemns us. God reads us. we don't read him. We don't get to say, this is my case before you, Lord. Our complaints and our qualms are small. Are they weighty? Does God care about those? Yes. But at the end of the book, towards the end, Oral is going to this council, and it's in a sort of like a vision. And she has been so angry in her case. She has built a case against Ungit for being responsible for the misery that she's in. And she goes to this council, and she has this little book, and she's standing in the middle of this room with so many people, and she is presenting her case to the gods of, look what you've done, look what you've done. There's this scene is just so stunning. It almost makes me tear up thinking about it. And she stands there with her case before these gods. She tells it all. She tells it all. Here are my complaints. Here's what you've done. Here I'm shaking my fist at you. And she comes to an understanding towards the end that she's wrong. And it was wrong of her to feel the way that she's felt and to say the things that she's said. That actually she is responsible for the events that have transpired because of what's in her heart. We too, I think, can learn from this book that we are in danger of, because of the choices that we make, wasting our lives and ruining other people's lives around us. And those are hard truths and realities to come face to face with, which the line where he drops this, the main line, is wild. You'll get chills, hopefully. And we can't truly hide from God. That's another major theme. And I love that. I love that truth. Because yes, we stand condemned before a holy God. And so he is just. His justice and his love are synonymous. They are not separate. They don't function as two different things. God is mean and also nice. Like, it just depends on his emotions that day. No, his justice is his love, and his love is his justice. And he has made a way for us to be cleansed, and he loves us. He doesn't condemn, ultimately, because of his son, Jesus. He's made a way for us to be reconciled to him because there has been a breaking in the relationship. There has been a fracture that only God himself could mend, and he did. And so we have no excuse to bring before God why we couldn't do the right thing or why we couldn't be faithful. It says somewhere in scripture that we have all that we need that pertains to life and godliness, meaning that God equips us completely to have what we need always in regards to faithfulness to him. So we're never going to be put in situations where we can't be faithful. Now, will we be tempted and will we be unfaithful? Yes, but he is faithful and just to forgive, and we have an advocate. Like, God is our advocate, you know? And so I just love that. I love the themes of this book. I know I'm not even scratching the surface. They go so much deeper. But that is my favorite book. Till We Have Faces. I highly recommend that you read it, even though we've kind of done a deep dive, but there are so many layers that I have not covered yet. And I think that you would enjoy it. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.